The drive from Santa Cruz to Fort Ord, near Laguna Seca, outside of Salinas, was lovely. The sky was clear and the day was unseasonably warm. We pulled up to the head of a hiking trail that's now managed by the Bureau of Land Management. At the beginning of our exploration, we came upon a bridge, stamped with the years 1908 and 1911. Fort Ord became a military training camp in 1917, so this bridge was even older than the land's military history. I was struck by its permanence. I really wished it could speak. I imagine the sheer number of footprints and tire tracks that have been left on it in the 100+ years that it's been standing. I really wanted to know more of its story, and I was not disappointed. Humans like to document things, memories, stories, and they become this integral part of history. Just as I expected, the underside of the bridge was marked with 103 years' worth of people's desire to be remembered. My favorite read, B.N., February 4th, 1911.
The next place we visited was Fort Ord Dunes State Park in Monterey, California. There was an old fenced-off military area, and Lacey and Joe were giving Sean a boost to look over a tall concrete wall to see what was on the other side. An older man on a bicycle rode up and told us, "If you're going to go in there, make sure you have a way out. I used to be stationed here." At first when he stopped, it added to the tension because there were many no trespassing signs. But then when he told us to just be sure we had a way out rather than don't go in, it's dangerous, it was a little more comforting. We walked around more and saw a shed behind the fence with a poison warning sign on it. Despite the obvious warnings, there were many spots where people had dug under the fence and bent it to get in, and there was graffiti on many of the structures. It was interesting to see the sign specifically say Danger Poison Storage Area instead of the common hazardous material warning signs we are used to seeing today.
The first thing that struck me upon encountering the main site was its scale. The sheer number of barracks that just went on was a big step up from the bridge we had investigated earlier. Its size quickly confirmed to me that we had arrived. I thought, this is the place. This is a military base. This is Fort Ord. Once a prominent military establishment associated with glamorous names like Clint Eastwood and Jimi Hendrix, Fort Ord now quietly gives in to nature's clutches. It resembles a desolate, abandoned town straight out of a summer horror film, which frightened yet beckoned us as we stumbled through its gates. None of us had come prepared for the wild, glass-ridden terrain that greeted us, a fact most amusingly signified by Joe's flip-flops. We decided to investigate the first building to seem safe enough for entry. I remember entering first and being greeted by a stair landing leading up into darkness. I glanced over to see a light switch and casually flicked it up and down, but knew that it wouldn't work. Checking each stair's firmness along the way, we cautiously made our ascent and found ourselves in a musty hall. It resembled a dorm hall, but with no doors and even tinier rooms. A sign on the exit door at the end warned, "No girls allowed." Lacey stood by the sign and we couldn't help but feel that she was not the first person to break those rules. All of the buildings in Fort Ord were identical to this one, but for a few unique areas that resembled mess and rec halls.
Fort Ord, what an amazing place. Everywhere you looked, there was a piece of history waiting to tell you the story. I remember it was a beautiful sunny day before setting out our adventure. We visited several places and were able to discover tons of cool ruins, from a bridge that dated 1917 to rows and rows of abandoned barracks. Although we were unable to explore some areas due to the fact that it was private property, it did not stop us from looking around. However, what interested me the most was not the cool buildings or the pieces of artifacts, but rather the street signs. Yes, the street signs. You may think the street signs would have little to nothing about the history of Fort Ord, but I think otherwise. Just looking at the street signs gives you an idea of what the place was like. For instance, street signs like General Jim Moore or Colonel Durham gives one the idea that they were somewhere important in the past. And yeah, in fact they were. They were famous leaders who commanded many brigades during the time. On top of that, street signs were helpful in guiding us where to look. The label where the 3rd Artillery or 11th Cavalry location was. Thus we had no problems getting around and continuing our journey in discovering the truth. Lastly, most street signs were associated with events that occurred during the time period, World War II to post-World War II, Cold War, Vietnam, Korean War, and so on. thus giving us the knowledge of not only the events that happened in Fort Ord, but rather the events that occurred internationally. For example, the streetside Imjin Parkway. Imjin is also known as the Imjin River, a river that flowed from North Korea to South Korea. The reason why it was so important is because a significant battle was fought between the two countries there. Looking back on our adventure, we were able to uncover vast amount of information, all because of a single street sign.